لله الذي خلق السماوات والأرض وجعل الظلمات والنور ثم الذين كفروا بربهم يعدلون وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We are going to inshallah dive into one of the oceans in reference to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has opened for us by way of knowledge about His actions, His relationships, and the way He deals with His creation. And it would be good to recall for a refresh so that we remain focused, that our thematic study of the Qur'an is focused on the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have taken a thematic approach to the book as per Imam Ghazali rahimullah. Sirrul Qur'an wa lubabuhu mul asfa wa maqsiduhul aqsa da'watul ibad ila al-jabbar al-ala. The sir of the Qur'an, I have some cold. The sir of the Qur'an, the most secret aspect of the Qur'an, its innermost secret, is that this is an invitation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to His creation. And we said that this invitation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has three primary themes. First is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself, and then the path to Him, and finally the hereafter, what happens at the end of the path. We said that humankind has no option but to take the path. As we live our life, we are on a path. Whether it's the right path or not is to be finally disclosed to all humankind, every single one of us, on the day when we meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But He has guided through sending His prophets, and the prophets have brought the books, the last of which is the Qur'an, that is going to remain until the end of time. And I have received some questions which I would like to cover as we proceed. And one of the questions that just came to my mind was, why is the Qur'an the last book? Why has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stopped sending prophets? And these are real questions that like our brothers and sisters have out there, and it's good to keep addressing them as we proceed. Our belief is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala started to give guidance to humankind as soon as He sent the first human being, Adam alayhi salam, and his wife to this planet. He was guided, and then the series of prophets continued until the last of them. Why the last of them? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala completed I have completed your deen today, and He preserved the deen in the form of the book and the sunnah. So the need for prophets stopped after the coming of the last prophet, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserved what He wanted to show human beings until the end of time. He left behind a book that is beyond corruption, and he left behind a documented, authentic sunnah. And our job and our function as Muslims, as believers, is to understand the book, and that's what we are trying to do through these classes, and others have done for ages. Now, we said that there is no path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala except through what He has disclosed to us about Himself. There is no path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala except what He has disclosed of Himself. We said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Dhat, the Ism Jalala, the name Allah, refers to His being. His being is unlike any other being, and nobody can comprehend His being, because human mind can only comprehend the things which can come within the grasp of our faculties, which can be known to us. But because He is unlike anything that we know, therefore we cannot grasp His Dhat. And this was one of the questions. What is Allah made of? Is it light? Is it nur? Is it just waves? We don't know. We have no access to that exalted being. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then tells us that He has names. Allahu la ilaha illa huwa lahul asma'ul husna. He has Asma'ul Husna, and I'll translate what Asma'ul Husna means, and this is the focus of our class today, inshallah. And he tells us, هُوَ اللَّهُ الْخَالِقُ الْبَارِيُ الْمُصَوِّرُ لَهُ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى يُسَبِّحُ لَهُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ. He is Allah, Al-Khaliq, the Creator, Al-Bari, the Initiator, Al-Musawwir, the Fashioner. Lahul Asma'ul Husna, for Him are Asma'ul Husna. Yusabbihu lahu ma fi samawati wal ard. Everything in the heavens and the earth glorifies, does the tasbih, and He is Al-Aziz, the mighty, Al-Hakim, the wise. Then He says, قُلِ ادْعُوا اللَّهَ أَوِ ادْعُوا الرَّحْمَنَ أَيَّامَ تَدْعُوا فَلَهُ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى وَلَا تَجْهَرْ بِصَلَاتِكَ وَلَا تُخَافِتْ بِهَا وَابْتَغِي بَيْنَ ذَلِكَ سَبِيلًا. قال قُلِ ادْعُوا اللَّهَ, call Allah by Ar-Rahman, or by whatever name. Falahul Asma'ul Husna, for Him are Asma'ul Husna. And the fourth occurrence of Asma'ul Husna is Walillahi Asma'ul Husna Fad'u biha, for Allah are the Asma'ul Husna, so call Him by those names. And we did this last time as well. وَذَرُوا الَّذِينَ يُلْحِدُونَ فِي أَسْمَائِهِ سَيُجْزَوْنَ مَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. And those who do ilhad in His names, they would receive their recompense for what they were doing. These are the four ayahs in which the phrase Asma'ul Husna appears. Asma'ul Husna are translated as beautiful names, or the most beautiful names in English language. But we are going to, inshallah, dive deep into the question of what does it really mean, and try to conceive it. Asma'ul Husna is a phrase made of two nouns, Al-Asma and Al-Husna. Asma is the plural of Ism. So if we know what Ism means, and then we know what Al-Husna means, and then we say, what does it mean to say Asma'ul Husna? So rough translation of Asma is the names, it's the plural of Ism. Al-Husna is translated as the most beautiful. So for most readers of the Qur'an, they say, okay, the most beautiful names of Allah, and then they go into what are these names, and then there is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which will inshallah go into that detail soon, that there are 99 names of beautiful names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whoever memorized them would enter Jannah. So we'll inshallah discuss what does it mean that anyone who memorizes 99 names will go to Jannah. These are very, very important aspects to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the first question is, what is Ism? Plural is Asma. What is Ism? The second question is, what is Husna, which is the most beautiful? But what is beauty? How do we define beauty? Definitions are one of the most difficult things in the world to do, and we have people who are specialized in writing definitions, just definitions. Kitab al-Tarif, and every major thinker in Islam, in our tradition, has said something about both Ism and Husna, and meaning definitions. Regarding the Ism, there are 70 different definitions of the word Ism. In Asrar al-Arabia, the mysteries of Arabic language, Ibn Ambari says there are 70 different definitions of Ism. And there are questions whether Ism, meaning name, is the same as what is being named, or is it different in itself. To take one example, we say snow. Snow is a noun. Ism is a noun. In English we translate Ism as noun. Snow is a noun. When we say noun, what do we mean? We mean something out there that is cold and white, and we know what snow looks like because we have snow out there. When we say snow, are we referring to that thing sitting out there in the parking lot? We are saying this is snow, but when we say snow, we have a mental conception attached to the name snow. Now, if all the snow were to disappear from the face of this planet, we would still have snow in our mind. This concept, this snow that is in our mind now is different from what we named in the first place, because that snow has disappeared. There is no more snow left. We cannot hold that white and cold thing and say this is snow, because that is gone. The only thing left is in our mind, which has an existence because the mind is perceiving snow. And when we say snow, the third thing is that these S-N-O-W, these are letters of the language that we are using to designate, to name a thing, the act of naming. Now, all these three aspects, are they the same? This is not a theoretical discussion. It appears theoretical, but Imam al-Ghazali, he wrote a whole book on it. And this is very poorly translated here, but poor translation because all the technical terms, he just doesn't get it. It's wrong. Like he uses the word such as holy men. We don't have holy men. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is holy. Mukarrabun, he mistranslates. So, but anyways, I'm saying it's not theoretical because when we say that access to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is through Asmaul Husna, and we don't even understand what Ism means, then we have no access to Him. We say Allah is Ism, Allah is noun, but we don't even know what Ism means, then we don't have. So is the name the same as the named? Meaning, if we say Allah, or we say Ar-Rahman, or we say Ar-Rahim, Are we referring to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or are these two different things that we are saying? Like we said, the snow, if all the snow disappears, we still have snow in our mind, conceived as an entity, although it has no physical reality left. So there are various positions on this, and these are very heated debates. Like people really get very strong about it. And Imam al-Ghazali, when he goes after someone, you don't want to come in front of his sword. Like he just tears people apart, because it affects fundamental belief system. And the brother who asked this question about Asmaul Husna as well, there was a question, why are just 99 names? We'll inshallah deal with that. But first, let's just make the connection between the name Ism, and I won't go into the two schools of thought. One is called the Basran, from Basra, and the second is the Kufan, and they also differ about what is the asl from which the word Ism comes, whether it is seen mim waw, whether it's seen mim waw, three letters, like what is the original. And the Kufis, they say no, it's waw seen mim, and the Basrans are different. So I won't go into that, but what is most important for us to understand that according to Imam al-Ghazali and most of the scholars from the same creedal system, the name and the named and the process of naming are three distinctively different things. Meaning, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists in His own being. He is not in any human being's mind. His reality is His reality, which is different from what we can conceive by naming Him, even the names that He gives Himself. Because He says He is Al-Khaliq. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He is Al-Khaliq, but Al-Khaliq means the act of creation, which is different from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So one of the questions again was, are these Asmaul Husna attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What is the relationship of Asmaul Husna to His being? Because He has a being. His essence is Zat. Are these added to the essence, or are they separate from the essence of His Zat? So Allah, when we went into the details of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we said Allah is the only ism, the only noun that points to His Zat. Everything else is His sifa. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the word Allah is not the sifa, is not the attribute of anything. Whereas every other name that He has disclosed is an attribute of Allah. Let me repeat this. When we say Ar-Rahim is an attribute, is a quality that defines Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that gives us He is the most merciful. That is, Ar-Rahim is qualifying Allah. But when we say Allah, the word Allah is not qualifying anything, there is no, He is just, this is just the name of the Zat, of the being itself. Is that clear? So all the qualifiers are Asmaul Husna, but they qualify is not the right. They give us an inclination of one of the aspects of His Zat. Whereas when we say Allah, it's the totality of His being. It's the Zat of Allah. So there are lots of examples that scholars give. I just gave the example of snow. Let's next go to what is Al-Husna. So we understood Asma. Is it clear? It's the plural of ism. Ism has three aspects, and these are separate, distinct aspects. So it's the reality of a thing that we are pointing, that snow. When we say snow is just a sound made up of letters of the English language. We can say sulj, we can say barf. Snow has different names in different languages. People can call the same object with different names in different languages. Object remains the same. So the word is a sound, and by convention, when we say snow, everybody understands that I am talking about this cold and white thing that comes down from the sky. Nobody is going to say, when you learn snow, when children learn snow, you don't think this is a chair, right? Chair has its own name. It's not called snow. It's different, right? That's how do you learn that? How do you learn that chair is something like that and snow is what is outside? Somebody tells you, right? This is snow. And once you know, and this is, when we first started, we could have easily called that white and cold things chair. And everybody agrees that. And we make that thing all the time. New words are coming, hundreds of new words are coming into English and every other language because of technology and all that new things that we say we have discovered a new planet. That planet has no name. There is a convention, there is a body, there is an international body that names these planets. And this is all arbitrary. They could call it anything. Like when they went to our countries and they said, this mountain is Mount Everest. Who is Everest? This mountain has existed for centuries, and this person comes and he says, now this mountain is Mount Everest, and everyone says, yes, this is Mount Everest. Isn't that strange? they name and everybody says, yes. This is. So these are human constructs, and they are historical, they are political, they have so many other aspects to it. And once you change the name and people accept that name, that mountain has lost what it was. Like these people have lived on this North American continent for centuries. They had their own names for what Allah has created on this land. They named those things, but white man comes and says, no, now this is this name. They lose their whole culture, their whole association. So names are extremely important, extremely important. Like Shakespeare was right, and he was the last person of this civilization who still had connections with reality. And when he says, I want to say is focused on, so what is beauty? Again, we have a word in English language, right? We can spell it out. How do you spell beauty? B-E-A-U-T-Y, right? What does it mean? What does it mean? This is a very difficult one. And we need to do this. This is not theoretical, because we want to know Asmaul Husna. We want to know what does this phrase mean. But what is beauty? When you go to the dictionaries of Arabic language, these people specialize in lugha, in language, and their reach is the classic definition of beauty in the dictionary is this is the opposite of ugly. It's like saying white is the opposite of black. But does that tell us anything? It doesn't tell us anything. We have scholars who actually, they are philosophers of language, they are philosophers of concepts. And my favorite is Raghib al-Asfahani. every time, like he wrote this Mufradat al-Qur'an, he wrote this wonderful, very accessible 2-volume short dictionary. Every single word in the Qur'an, what does it mean linguistically and what does it mean conceptually? This is a wonderful resource. It's just, he was just an extraordinary scholar. So he says, in Arabic, beauty is husn. Ha, sin, noon. Husn. And he says that al-husn ibaratun an kulli mabhaj marhubin fihi wa dhalika thalathun adr. He says, anything that produces a sense of joy, a sense of relief, a sense of harmony within our being is beauty, and it has three aspects. This sense that this impact of beauty that human beings have can either be min jahat al-aql. It can either be in the intellect. Our intellect receives something from this thing called beauty that makes it just calm. It just opens up a sense of wonder, sense of it's the aql. The second is his third is, I'm going to the third first, min jahat al-his. Now, we perceive things through our senses, external senses and internal senses. Beauty, when seen, produces a sense in the faculty of sight that gives it joy, that gives it harmony, that gives it a sense of tranquility. It's got several layers in terms of what the faculty of seeing receives from something beautiful. We have this beautiful fragrance coming to us, like a fragrance comes to us that is it just produces to our senses of smell calmness, a sense of harmony, a sense of being in a good situation. That perfume reaches the sense of smell. A sound is beautiful. Recitation of the Qur'an is beautiful to the sense of hearing because it does something to our whole being. That's a beautiful example actually. When we have beautiful recitation of the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does it do to us? It just takes us out of our little worries and all the stress and all the other things. We are in a different place now. So, al-husn, three aspects. The third one, min jahat al-hawa. This is a little bit difficult to explain. And he takes all the examples from the Qur'an itself. It's not that he's making them up. He takes them from the Qur'an. So the act of hawa is something that we really want. We are just so desireful of this particular thing or being or state, whether it's material or immaterial. We are we are after something. Hawa, it can be used negatively as well. It's used in the Quran negatively as well. But in this particular sense, it's not in the negative sense. So, three aspects of beauty give us a certain concept of the concept of beauty. And I just want to have a footnote here about this very famous line, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. When you come to this thing, what does it do? The beauty is in the eye of the beholder. This is a very famous saying, and everybody says, yes, that's true. But is it true? What does it do to the concept of beauty? It makes it relative. It takes the absoluteness of beauty, of the concept of beauty, and it connects it to the beholder of the beauty. And whenever you come across something like this, know that this is the facade, this is the corruption of the fundamental concepts humanity has held for ages, and now after Renaissance it started to just go down. Because what we did now, we said that there is nothing objectively can be called beauty that is out there by itself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His names, the sound of the Qur'an, like all of these things which have beauty built into their beings, they are now suddenly relative qualities. Somebody may think this is beautiful, and somebody says the azan, the beautifully called azan, just is out of this world, it just takes me somewhere else. And others say this is noise, turn it off. I can't stand it. So the concept of beauty of these two people are different. And they say, no, there is nothing absolute. This person has rights and this person has rights. We don't accept that, because if we take the absolutes out, then there is nothing left. There are no standards left. The world cannot function. We just said that this planet was named such and such by this international body, and everybody said yes, we accept it. This fellow goes to a mountain and says this is Mount Everest, everybody says yes. Like, we cannot function without acceptable common grounds. And most of all, if beauty and ugliness they're all relative, they are relative in a certain sense of, at a lower level. That's a different discussion, but as I said, this was a footnote. I want to go back to beautiful names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I hope it's clear that when we use the term Al-Asma'ul Husna with reference to the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have two words, Al-Asma and Al-Husna. Al-Husna, by the way, is the superlative form from the noun Husn, and it means the built-in translation is most beautiful in the Husna itself. So linguistically, Al-Husna has the superlative built into it. We don't say most in Arabic separately as if we have to say in English. Right. Likewise, this beautiful book here, Al-Maqsid Al-Asna. Asna has built in the most radiant. Asna is the most radiance objective in the explanations of Asmaul Husna, of the beautiful, of the most beautiful. And this is a wonderful book. It's just so then we come to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that about the 99 names. This is very important for us to go deep into it now. This is a hadith that is present in both the Sahih of Imam Muslim and Imam Bukhari, rahmatullah alayhima. Allah have mercy on both of them. And in the hadith literature is just a fascinating field in itself. But when we say this is in the Sahih of Imam Muslim and Imam Bukhari, we have a certain degree of confidence of its authenticity, especially if the hadith is in both collections. Second thing to note, and this is also important for the understanding of this translation, that Allah has 99 beautiful names, and whoever has memorized them would enter Jannah. There are variants in the riwayah, in the transmission of what the Prophet ﷺ said. There are different wordings in different ahadith. And this becomes tricky, because then you say, well, did the Prophet say this or did he say this? And the Prophet ﷺ said things in public. If he's sitting in the masjid and there are 40 people sitting there, 10 years down the road, the person is telling his children or friends or family that the Prophet ﷺ said this. And the wording may be a little bit not the exact wording. And we know that in the Sahih of Imam Muslim, great care has been taken for the vocabulary, for the text itself. So whenever we want to go to the actual text, we go to Imam Muslim. And he says, Lillahi tis'at wa tis'una asma man hafizaha dakhal al-jannah wa inna allaha bitrun yuhibbul bitr. For Allah there are 99 names. Whoever has memorized them will enter Jannah. And indeed Allah is Vitr, and He loves Vitr. Vitr is the odd number, 1, 3, 5. Allah is Vitr, and He loves Vitr. The question here is, what does it mean, whosoever has memorized? We have two words. One is man ahsaha, and the second is man hafizaha. In the narrations, hafiza, hafiz, the one who memorized, this is the Qur'an. Ahsa, the word appears in the Qur'an. If you were to enumerate, count of the blessings of Allah, you wouldn't be able to. So ahsa is to enumerate, to comprehend. The question then arose for the scholars, what did the Prophet ﷺ mean when he said that man aksaha, the one who enumerated? Did he mean that 99 names, you just memorize them and then you will enter Jannah? What does it mean, man aksaha? And the explanations are that, then what is memorization? When you say, I have memorized this, what does it mean? Does it mean that these are sound waves that you are now carrying in your being and you just memorize? When we say this is a hafiz, when we have in Ramadan somebody recites the whole Qur'an, for example, from memory, is it like the tape recorder we used to have? We put just magnetic head on the magnetic tape and the sound starts to come? Is it some kind of wave in the being? Does memorization mean that? When he said that, alayhi salatu wasalam, man hafizaha? Or does it mean the one who has taken the essence of these names in his being and has transformed into what the names are? So the name is the most merciful. And the one who has memorized it and who have enumerated it means that he has become not the most merciful, but he is a shadow of the most merciful in his own being. So the memorization, this is in the linguistic understanding of the hadith in Arabic or any other language, that the Prophet ﷺ said this, but it is in the actual act of conceiving, just as we conceive beauty to be not just a word but something else. We conceive the act of enumerating these names in the sense of transforming our own beings in the shadow of these names. All of these names that are... Now the hadith does not really tell us what these names are. And in one of the riwayas, in one of the versions, we actually have very specific 1 minus 100. The Prophet ﷺ said 99 names and he said 1 minus 100. Now, again, one of the questions was, why just 99 names? Like if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is exalted as He is, then why would we reduce it to 99? And there is no list that we know from the Prophet ﷺ. So how do we know these names? The actual names, where do they come from? This is called the scholarly reflection and the scholarly striving to grasp the meanings of the words of the Prophet ﷺ. He said 100 minus 1 names, but he didn't tell us the names. What do we do now? We really want these names, but he didn't tell us. Well, he must have said this because these names exist in the Qur'an. Like that, either they were told to the Prophet ﷺ directly. In that case, he would have transmitted that Jibreel alayhi salam came to me and he said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has 99 names and these are 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? He didn't do that. But they exist. Where else? Go to the Qur'an. So scholars started to go to the Qur'an, and therefore we have different lists of these names. The most used in our tradition is the list in Imam Tirmizi's Sunan, and in the Tirmizi, he says, according to Al-Tirmizi, these names are Huwallah. These are Allah, Allazi la ilaha illahu, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Al-Malik Al-Quddus, As-Salam Al-Mu'min Al-Muhaymin Al-Aziz Al-Jabbar Al-Mutakabbir, Al-Khaliq Al-Bari Al-Musawwir Al-Ghaffar Al-Qahhar Al-Wahhab Al-Razzaq Al-Fatah Al-Alim Al-Qabid, Al-Basit Al-Khafid Al-Rafi Al-Muizz Al-Muzil, Al-Sami Al-Basir Al-Hakam Al-Adl, اللطيف الخبير الحليم العظيم الغفور الشكور العلي الكبير الحفيظ المقيت الحسيب الجليل الكريم الرقيب المجيب الواسع الحكيم الودود المجيد الباعث الشهيد الحق الوكيل القوي المتين الولي الحميد المحصي المبدي المعيد المخشي المميت الحي القيوم الواجد الماجد الواحد الصمد القادر المقتدر المقدم المؤخر الأول الآخر الظاهر الباطل الوالي المتعالي البر التواب المنتقم العفو الرؤوف مالك الملك ذو الجلال والإكرام المقسط الجامع الغني المغني المانع الضار النافع النور الهادي البديع الباقي الوارث الرشيد الصبور. Imam Tirmizi wrote this list and then he said, but these are only 65. What to do now? He found 65 names. Then there are other lists. And then the questions arose, did the Prophet ﷺ really mean 100 minus 1 as in 99? Or did he mean that these are 99 names in the Qur'an or in the Sunnah, and there are other names as well? In addition to these names, there are other names. Then the question arose, can we have lists of all the possible names that we can find in the Qur'an and in the Sunnah? Later on the question arose, can we actually extract nouns from the Qur'an, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does this, for example, وَسَقَاهُمْ رَبُّهُمْ شَرَابًا طَهُورًا, and their Rabb gave them the drink of pure sharab, of pure drink. Their Rabb, this is the ayah in the Quran. Can we call him Saki then? Because Saki is the one who gives the drink. Can we, in other words, can human beings extract names for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the actions mentioned in the Quran? These are very serious discussions, and they are helpful for us to understand, because understand, again, our focus is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so they help us to understand the vastness, this ocean in which we can swim, to internalize our understanding of who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Because we cannot, there is no door to His Dhat. For human beings, we have these eyes, we can see this person is like this, he looks like this, his color is this, his height is this, his shape is this, his hands are like. We don't have that access. But we have access to Allah's af'al, what He does. We have access to the sense of mercy, the sense of love, this understanding, these emotions that we have, these feelings that we have. Where do they come from? They come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He said that in Allah, this is the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah jameel wa yuhibbu jamal. Allah is beauty and He loves beauty. And there is a hadith that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to Yusuf alayhi salam. The beauty of Yusuf alayhi salam is defined as having the most concentrated form of beauty in this world that can ever be given to a human being. And the rest is just a shadow. And there is a hadith that says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just put one portion of His mercy among all the human beings. And this is the currency with which all the human beings deal. The totality of mercy that humankind has, millions and millions of mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters, the relationship of mercy, that's just one portion of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we are just circulating among ourselves. Like if you think of totality of the money and you say, okay, at one time there was only 100 of money and only one currency, one was put, and from the beginning until the end of time, human beings are just dealing with this one unit of this. So these are not just the theoretical discussions. We have a number of lists of Asmaul Husna, and there are books. Scholars have really strived. For example, we have a book by Az-Zajaji. This is Abil Qasim Abdul Rahman bin Ishaq al-Zajaji. He died in 340 Hijrah. And he wrote a book called Ishtaqaq Asma'ullah. And he went through the Qur'an, and this is a book that, this is a tradition that has come to us through two chains. And he says, Fi Fatihatul Kitab, this is the list that he is driving from the book of Allah Ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He goes to every single surah and says, Fi Fatihatul Kitab, in the Al-Fatiha, it's Allah, Rabb, Rahman, Rahim, Malik. Fil Baqarah, and then he says in Surah Al-Baqarah, there are Sitta wa Ishrun Asma. There are 26 names. So every single ayah is looked at and says Muhit, Qadir, Alim, Tawab. These are the names found in Surah Al-Baqarah. all the way to Suratul Nas. So lists were created that way. Ibn Hajar Rahimullah, his list is one of the most widely used list in books of explanations of the Asmaul Husna. Books written on the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala which explain. He has 115 names in his list. And it's a beautiful quote from him. He says that he sat down and he wanted to make a list that would be inclusive of the Qur'an and the Sunnah. And he's a scholar of Sunnah, he's a Hadith scholar, he's got all the Hadith in his own being. Like, can you imagine? He was a giant. But then, like all scholars at the end, they always say, Wallahu alam, Allah knows. The Hadith that encourage these scholars to really have this kind of courage with the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is also beautiful. Allahumma inni abduka. This is a dua, this is a very beautiful dua. Allahumma inni abduka, ibnu abdik, ibnu amatik, nasiyati biyadik, madin fi hukmuk, adlun fi qadaak. This is the dua that we make in times of stress and difficulty, that we assert our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then we say, Asaluka bi kulli ismin huwa laka sammayta bihi nafsak. I ask you relief from my situation by every name with which you have named yourself. Aw anzaltahu fi kitabik, or the name that you have disclosed or sent down in your book. Aw allamtahu ahadam min khalqik, or you have taught that name to any of your creation. Aw istatharta bihi fi ilmi al-ghayb, or the names that you have kept secret in the knowledge of the hidden, that is with you. This is the hadith that allowed the scholars to say, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has disclosed certain names, not just 99, but even 115 or whatever lists have been made, but that doesn't mean that He doesn't have names that He has kept. He hasn't disclosed. So, there are other aspects of this, but because our focus is, inshallah, just to remain focused on the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this in itself is a huge subject of Allah's Asmaul Husna. And this is one of the shorter texts on it. I will inshallah stop here, so be able to respond to some questions.
So, if I may, in the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that you mentioned, the 99 names, he ended with Allah is witr and He loves witr. So those two combined, then what is the significance of Allah is witr and He loves witr? What does that mean?
The hadith says that, I just want to repeat the question for the online audience, that in the hadith it's mentioned that Allah is witr and He loves witr. And what is the significance of witr? Because the witr is, it occurs in the Qur'an, وَالشَّفْعِ وَالْوَتْرِ. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, single most Qul huwallahu ahad, the single most characteristic of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He of His Dhat, discloses to humankind is His unicity, His oneness. Kul huwallahu ahad. And when we said last time, this ahad is not like 1, 2, 3, 4, but still it is vitr. It is singular. It's not dual. So 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. These are odd, and the further explanation that is given by the Prophet ﷺ also in this respect is that end your nightly prayers with an odd, make it odd, because Allah loves odd. Meaning, if we have prayed 8 rakats or 12 rakats, make it 13 or 9, make the last one single rakah. We can do it as 3 or 5 rakats, but make it. So that is what it leads to, that Allah loves the odd numbers because He is single, He is absolute, there is no comparison to Him. So that brings us closer to His Zat in a sense. And also because I think there is this very strong rejection of any kind of shirk, which the Arabs did. What they did was they brought others on equal par. So that odd, that being, they said, yes, he is being, but there are other gods. And then this thing about the Son of Allah, Son of God, and all of those other concepts that. Yes.
Can you authenticate what I'm going to tell you? That I've heard that Allah is what you think of Him. Is it right to say? Is it the authenticated statement?
So the hadith that refers to human relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is dealing not with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself, but with the relationship that human being has with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then it goes on to the aspects of hope, fear, despair, tawakkul, reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the person who thinks of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the wali, Allahu waliyul ladina amanu, Allah is the protector of those who believe. He has a concept of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He thinks of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as his protector. For that person, that protector exists. The one who doesn't have this thinking of Allah, it's not that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that person, but it's the person who does not have that concept of being in the protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He doesn't have that.
So, second part of my question, if that is the case, then every person in a given time cannot have the same relationship depending upon his situation. I'm sick, I want help. Somebody is poor, he wants wealth. So and at a very given time, for me, Allah is the cure. For somebody else, he is a sustainer. For somebody else, he is different, right?
So the secondary question here for the people online is that at any given time, the person who is sick, for example, for that person, Allah is the curer. So the answer to that is that the fundamental relationship that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created with us, with the creation, is of being the ibad of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being the abd. The abd goes through various stations in his life or